That's the first time you've ever said hi first. I'm so happy.
I went for it because I knew you were going to be sad if I didn't do it. I can't hear another, you never say hi first. Hi.
Okay, well, there goes that. And that, my friends, is called a 180 360. We're right back.
Hello. How are you?
Hello. Hello, fellow marketeer.
Hello, and hello to our listeners.
Lindsay and I were just exchanging hair tips. First question.
Yes. How do you get some?
Side part.
I know, they say that makes you look old now, right? I don't care.
Well, I don't think it does.
I am old. If you're judging me on my side part, you have a lot of extra time on your hands.
My understanding is if you can pull off a center, a middle part, you have a symmetrical face. Is that true? If you don't have a symmetrical face.
They say symmetry is what defines beauty, right? The more symmetrical people's faces are, the more beautiful they look. That's
the more accepting we are of like their aesthetic subconsciously.
Yes. I do the center part anyway. I don't care.
Yeah, I know you as center part Lindsay.
Yeah. That's
you know me
I've
as
written on my tombstone.
You know me as the parting the Red Sea, Sean.
12-inch part, Sean.
My head's not that big. Well, that's another thing I've heard is that people with large heads are more attractive as like television personalities. So like they would talk about apparently Vanna White
like
has a
bubble?
huge head. I don't know. Okay. Lindsay, this is your spotlight.
Oh no.
So turn on that ring light. Lindsay, this is about you and your rant. I mean, your beliefs. I feel like we just talked about, we keep going back to our big revelations of what we learned last year. And we just talked about B2B, which was probably Lindsay's biggest revelation, which was B2B is sexy. But the other revelation that I think is really, there's two. One is just because you did it before doesn't mean you should do it again.
Yes.
What was the other one?
Mindset.
You can no longer segment by demographic and psychographic because people like Lindsay might not be like Lindsay.
Yeah, they go hand in hand as well. Like you do not have to do what you once did, and mindset is everything. Go hand in hand because one like feeds the other.
Yeah, and I think to bring it right back up to I think what started this rant craziness, but you're so right, is that idea that the biggest thing we're going to need to face is that things are, especially like in marketing and creative and that sort of thing, is things are evolving at the speed of culture.
Boom.
And it's like, what does that mean? And it means so many things, but specifically, I think what today's about ties into just because you did it before is we're now at this very uncomfortable phase in the industry where there is going to have to be a mindset shift in the industry about how we do things, because no longer are we able to take the time it has taken in the past to respond, or even actually, I'd almost say marketing in the past has never been set up to really need to respond. Traditional marketing was never there to truly respond.
Right. Until the birth of social media, essentially.
Yeah, and even that took a while.
When we were like, we have to respond now? People can talk to us?
Yeah, and Lindsay, you were probably at that sort of really early time in social where clients weren't even going on social because they didn't want to engage in any conversation that the negative topics or the pushbacks. And now we're at that point. But shockingly, the industry is still struggling around how do you plan for that?
And back then in like 2010, there would be in your community management playbooks that we would write like a 17-step escalation process to answer one tweet that would be escalated to the
with
CMO
approvals at every level. Yes.
Nationwide retailers. I'm like, for one tweet, this ship is going to go down. We need to figure this out. So
What do we do? Oh, too late. What do we do? Oh, too late.
Yeah. So where this all came from was pandemic hits. And I think essentially the vibe was, we're going to take this plan and put it on the shelf until it goes back to normal. And then we're going to pick it up and put it back out.
Park it.
Yeah, so it was very much like short-term bleeding. What do we do in the next 6 weeks? What do we do in the next 3 months? What do we do in the next 6 months? They're gonna like dust her back off once everything goes back to normal, I think was kind of the mentality. So of course, 2 years rolls on and we're like, okay, we can't do nothing. This can't just be like stop the bleeding type scenario for years, right? So around the holiday season, so a few months back, I started working with a client that was like, great, events are back on, we could go back door to door. A charitable foundation that was looking to do like a big holiday, execution when people are kind of in the spirit of giving. And they're like, perfect, what did we do in 2019? Was literally here's what we did in 2019, dust off the little Excel grid media plan and like, let's go back at it.
We're back.
Yeah. And I'm like, 100% no, 100% no. Like there's no way in hell we are going to take a plan from years ago after all we've been through, after consumer behaviors have permanently changed due to the length of the pandemic, after we understand so much more about mindset and we know how important that is and how it can be so different between people's demographics and our targets can have such different mindsets. After all we've learned, like we said in our 2021 revelations, just because you did it once before does not mean that you have to do it again. So I think that's what kind of spurred that revelation of actually now seeing some clients and brands and marketers doing that. So saying like, hey, we're just going to go back to what we did now.
And that's probably happening as we speak, right? Like a lot of those plans are being executed and we don't know how it's going.
100% it's happening. Without the even thought to say like, hey, is an event now the right thing for us to do? We have to do that. Do we have to go door to door? Is door to door the best way for us to collect donations? Is it
do not even get me started.
Yeah, like to engage a younger generation of supporters. No even like thought to say like, hey, should we be revisiting the way people behave now? So all of that aside, and we just like deal with it and go forward. Then I get in my inbox, which is what spurred this entire rant I had with Sean that brought on this topic, an article from AdAge, which is Marketing in 2022, 5 Trends to Watch. So I'm like, okay, what is it? I open up the trends emails always. I want to see what they're talking about. A lot of time it's kind of the same thing, like integrating digital and physical experiences. I'm like, okay.
Phygital.
Physical and digital, phygital, that was revolutionary. So in this trends email from AdAge, it had some really good ones. One of which being, you'll say goodbye to long-term planning. So a top trend to watch in 2022 is you'll say goodbye to long-term planning. I was like, couldn't agree more. What are we talking about? I could not agree more. So it goes on to say, marketing plans used to change once a year. Now once a week is too slow. MarTech tools let you develop campaigns fast, then adjust them in real time as data flows in on what's working today. And as AI uses that data to help predict what will work tomorrow. To quickly roll out new marketing, you'll need more tech. You'll need a marketing team organized for agility with a standardized process that includes clear roles and responsibilities and a unified approach to content and tone. I'm like, thank you. Just at a time when a lot of like brands and marketers are thinking like, hey, we're going to go back now because we're moving forward into where we used to be, apparently is the thought, is that big thinkers in our industry and thought leaders are also feeling the same, I think, kind of tension that you and I are feeling, Sean, in that long-term planning is no longer a thing.
There would be an industry that would beg to differ.
Yeah.
Because the good student that I am, Lindsay was like, this is what we're doing, this is what I want to talk about, but it's not going to be just about this, blah, 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 blah. Open to your input when I ask you, and don't say anything until I ask you. So I started Googling last night, because that's when we do our homework. Nothing. I was like, how do I ask this? So I would put bold statements like, what's happened to long-term planning? Is long-term planning thing of the past? Blah, blah, blah. Nothing.
You didn't see anything?
No, but maybe my Google was broken on my phone.
Maybe you had the Lindsay filter, so it's like, don't give her any more BS to rant on.
Well, like we do when we Google is we learn as, like, you don't go in and say, okay, I'm going to type in a statement, whatever. It's like you start with the language and you start saying, okay, so what's the right vocabulary? What's the right language I need to speak so that I know that, Strategy Magazine or this magazine is doing a piece on this in early 2022. What was really interesting is a lot of the stuff that came up was from the 2010s.
Yes.
Did you notice that? 2014, 2015.
Yes. Okay. So I did the same thing. So like 4 or 5 months ago when this client experience happened to me, as I'm still feeling the frustration, I see the AdAge article. I'm like, okay, let me challenge myself to say, am I wrong? Like, are people still going to do a lot of long-term planning? And is that going to be their solution? So I stumble across, and I'm so pumped to bring this forward because it challenges our jobs. I'm always curious to say, like, are we not needed in what we do? Do we need to do what we do as strategy planners differently because it doesn't work? Does it work? Does it not work? I believe in the work that we do and the value that we bring forward, but I'm always open to do things differently if we think it's not going to work. So I come across this article then in the Harvard Business Review, ironically, Sean, from 2014.
Right.
Which I think is like around that time. I saw a lot of stuff from around that time.
Yeah, 2014, 2015. Yep.
Yeah, strategic planning must have been like a hot, controversial kind of thing that maybe people were starting to get into then. So the title of this article is The Big Lie of Strategic Planning. I'm like, perfect. Show us that our jobs are a sham. So I go in and I'm reading this Big Lie of Strategic Planning article.
Please, because I'm looking for something else. This is killing me.
I'm trying to be a barista, so just
I want to make bracelets on Etsy. This is the straw that breaks the proverbial back of the camel.
Sean and I just launched our new business. It's called Baristas and Bracelets. So stay tuned for that podcast.
I'm just doing the logo now. Hang on.
Okay, quickly whip something up. So I get into this article, The Big Lie of Strategic Planning. Please read it. I'll put it in the references. It's so good. About halfway through the article, they get into this new kind of strategy philosophy. So it says, in 1978, Henry Mitzberg published an influential article in Management Science that introduced the notion of emergent strategy. Mitzberg's insight was simple, but indeed powerful. He distinguished between deliberate strategy, which is intentional. I'm assuming deliberate strategy would be what you would consider to be long-term planning right now. And this notion of emergent strategy, which is not based on an original intention, but instead consists of a company's response to a variety of unanticipated events. Pandemic. So it then says, Mitzberg's thinking was informed by his observation that managers overestimate their ability to predict the future and to plan for it in a precise and technocratic way. So people overestimate their own ability to anticipate the future and plan accordingly, essentially is what that's saying. And I'm going to read one more little part because this just gets me so excited. If the future is too unpredictable and volatile to make strategic choices, what would lead a manager to believe that it will become significantly less so? And how would that manager recognize the point when predictability is high enough and volatility is low enough to start making choices? Of course, the premise is untenable. Listen to this closely. There won't be a time when anyone can be sure that the future is predictable. This is the basis of what they call emergent strategy. This was written in 2014, and I think this is the question everyone has been asking themselves over the last 2 years. When can we recognize the point where predictability is high enough and volatility is low enough to start making choices? You can't. That will not come. The time when you will be able to see what is going to happen in 5 years, what consumers are going to be like, how you can predict that accurately in 5 years is not going to come. Hence, the shift away from the notion of long-term planning. Marinate on that for a quick sec.
I'm trying. You could have prepared me a little bit, you know? There's about 12 points there.
I know. So working on campaigns, for instance, in the spring of 2020, when all of this began, and in strategy and in brands, like creative advertising and things, we plan like typically 3 to 6 months out with campaigns, like a big campaign, as an example, like back to school season at a retailer or a holiday season. So we were trying to predict at that time what it would be like 3 to 6 months from now, so that we could inform the creative enough to put work on TV and on social media and things like that that would actually resonate. Impossible. It was impossible. And so the way that we kind of tackled that at that time was different kind of scenario planning. That was like a tool that we used. We said, if this happens, we do this. If this happens, we do this, etc.
Well, yeah, just so people understand, scenario planning is really to identify some sort of general yet specific contexts where, you know, it's this kind of person, like we talked about, not mindset per se, but around, you know, this demographic, psychographic of person who feels this way and lives this way and makes this much a year, blah, 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 are in a particular situation as it relates to a particular form of media and how they consume, you know, how they consume, meaning how do they buy, how do they consume content and all that sort of stuff. And that's, I think, a lot of things Lindsay has been saying, where first of all, that's not truly, it's not the best way to identify an effective context. And that's where Lindsay comes out with this idea of mindset, which is another one of her revelations. And it's that idea that it completely forces us all to relook at a process that was based on planning 2 years out, right? The planning company often being different than the execution companies.
Right.
And with different incentives. Because correct me if I'm wrong, a planning, you know, the strategic planner kind of agency was not truly accountable for the performance of the executions that their strategy trickled down to.
100%.
So it's just this low accountability. And I'm not like, it's like, yeah, the only way I justified success of any executions or big ideas I sold in was about picking particular metrics that showed performance in the positive ways, not even going down the routes where, well, why is this not performing well? You just didn't do that. And winning awards.
Don't even get me started on awards. Yeah. Like someone very dear to me says, that's just us talking to ourselves.
I know.
He's correct.
What I'll say is I had a conflicting moment, and tell me, Lindsay, if I'm taking us off topic, but it was a real conflict of, but I don't think it is. I think it all comes back to, in the field of marketing, based on a lot of the stuff we talked about last time, which was the global trends, and marketing needs to take a step back and understand how valuable it can be and should be in making sure that businesses stay on track, do what they promise, you know, support economies, do good things for consumers, and it extends far beyond making high margin or tons of money. But that's okay. So you're nodding. I can stop it there.
That's okay. No, it's good.
We think ourselves so advanced with the data and all that stuff, yet the behavior we don't change is we speculate, we don't truly analyze. We speculate for the benefit of keeping our jobs, of sustaining the industry within which we contribute or are rewarded for. And I think it's that idea of getting paid for secured work over a long period of time that is high margin, high value, like creative. And that cannot happen anymore. Bringing it right back to creative is going to have to learn. There needs to be some kind of practice or model in place that enables creative to evolve at the speed of culture.
Right. I 100% agree. And strategy as well, right? There needs to be checkpoints in place or people who push strategy to the point of asking that question.
Well, I feel that actually strategy is in it the best position to be the foundation for that change.
The best position to, but not all strategic thinkers think that way.
Agreed.
So that would be my suggestion to brands and marketers who say, we're going to dust off our plan from 2019. If you don't have someone in a planning position sitting in front of you say, why is that a good idea? Why do you want to do that? Is that the right thing for us to be doing? If they say, yeah, okay.
What do you want to get out of it? What information do you have? Are you really sure your idea is a good one?
Or even just like, what did you do back then that were helping you achieve specific goals? Now let's look at your goals right now and the way that people behave and the culture that we're in and the mindset that they have, and think about the best solution to achieve those goals today. If you don't have someone sitting in front of you saying that to you respectfully, I say this all in the notion of respect and collaboration.
If you haven't built a culture that allows for that too, right? And I think that's the other thing is, and we talked about this, what kind of culture needs to be in place that enables a very smart strategy person the authority to just challenge.
Right. I think that you're 100% right. Looping back to what we talked about before, all around talent, like the talent required, the environment in which you work, like you say, the culture of the workplace, all of those different things, the notion of collaboration, those all as well need to be in place for change like this to be able to happen. So it really goes back to talent first, for sure.
And how can that person that you just talked about be incented or rewarded based on how you challenge that company? Because the model right now is, it is not, no matter how brilliant a strategist is, your salary, your income, the livelihood of the company that you work for and love or don't is dependent on you not challenging for the sake of losing the business. Because to be fair, I am not calling out bad behaviors from strategists. I'm calling out a structure and an economy and a model that absolutely needs to evolve. Because if you look at, we talked about this, if you look at, say, how has the healthcare model had to evolve over the last 2 years with a pandemic? You know, how have financial institutions had to evolve? They evolve because they absolutely have to. Marketing, it should, but it's definitely at the tail end of where people will see change has to happen.
I think it's interesting how it kind of goes back to the work we're doing right now with reactive versus proactive leadership and that whole like mindset of how those companies operate. Like reactive environments produce that environment of like mediocrity and repetitive things. And they would be the type of people who are, because of fear and concern and safety for their jobs and things like that, would dust off an old plan, right? But we're encouraging you to not do that.
Yeah.
I have this quote that's pinned up in my office, and it says, when everything changes, the bold see opportunity. And I think that's where it's like, you can go backwards to what you once did, and you can see familiarity and comfort in that plan, perhaps most likely at the sacrifice of performance, or you can see opportunity in how everything has changed and challenge what you're kind of dusting off and thinking about the right solution for today.
Yep. Can I was on LinkedIn this morning, and LinkedIn was on fire this morning. I find it has its dips, but can I quote someone?
Yeah, please.
I want to see if you see the correlation note. Lindsay and I always do that. So I'm going to tell you something, and I want to see if you can make the connection. So this is from, I hope I can do this, but I think I can. This is from Alexandra Panousis, very highly regarded. And she says, we have all worked with them, the gifted communicators who are great at laying out a vision, but cannot land the plane.
Yeah.
The marketing industry is full of overpromises. That's a bold statement. I hope 2022 brings the end of this. We need more doers. If you can drive action or help mobilize a team to drive action, you will find success. We need more of these people. The work is in the details. Vision is important, but it must be executed.
Right. I wholeheartedly believe that to be true.
And then she cites Simon Sinek as quoting Thomas Edison, who said, "Vision without execution is hallucination." And I think there's a lot of hallucination
Say that
when
again.
it comes to vision. Can I say it again?
Yeah, say it again, because I love it so much, not because you said it not well. You said it well. Say it again.
Vision without execution is hallucination.
Ooh.
It's all fine and good to have vision. It's all fine and good to know your why. But if you can't execute it, then it's no value whatsoever.
It's so true. The first things I say to clients when I meet them for the first time, whether it's an agency or a direct to client opportunity, it's that I'm a practical planner. That is not sexy. I'm a practical planner. And I say, I'm not going to hand you a strategy and walk away and say good luck. I'm going to be there with you to execute it. It's going to be a very implementable plan, whether that be a bit more simple because you can have more impact if you do less things, whether it be a more practical approach to creative because it's based on actually driving conversion, whatever the case may be. I think a practical approach to strategy based on data, insight, research, and mindset is what is actually going to make something executable.
I will tell you, I'm very excited, and I love when I see things like what Alexandra Panus has put in. What I loved even more, she's got to be part of a culture or a leader of a culture, and she's proving by example. But man, you should see the first comment I saw. Absolutely, completely disagree.
Really?
And I just looked and I'm like,
say?
Go check it out. Basically says doers cannot be visionaries. That's the problem. So
that is so not true. I am going to waste the rest of my day in this comment feed.
But I applaud this person for challenging a bold statement with a strong opinion, because that actually was even of greater value to me to see that reaction. And actually, when he reacted, there was a lot of replies supporting what he said. So clearly,
oh my goodness, I'm so excited.
Clearly, she has tapped a nerve.
I think there is the big delusion or misinformation, an old school philosophy that strategists are thinkers and intellects and executionists are doers. If you can't envision the doing of your plan and how it might come to life, how are you going to know if it's feasible? How are you going to be able to direct anyone to execute the vision of your strategy? You need to be able to think through that doing lens, at least at a bare minimum.
I'll say it one more time, that if you can't, then is your vision not a hallucination?
And also if maybe some people really aren't doers. Maybe they're just.
It's not wrong to not be a doer.
No, but at least then you have to have even more of a collaborative mindset. You need to be able to bring in a doer to bounce around your ideas and to talk about the actual plan and how it would be executed. Otherwise, it may as well just be an hallucination.
Yeah, and I think another thing, though, is his response. She made a bold statement. His response is 100% fear-based. So it's not someone who cannot do, it's someone believes that he doesn't have to do. In fact, if he's challenged to do, then he believes he is reducing his value. It is below him. And what was interesting to me is when I was first at that, because it was digital, I became a creative director very early in my career. I'll be the first to say far too early, but spend the rest of my career learning how early it was for me. But I was the only one, when I sat around those tables, all the agencies, and we were a digital agency, so of course we kowtowed to in praise of the ad agency and all those ones. I was the only creative director who actually did the work.
Right.
the budgets weren't $5 million. So it wasn't like a media or, a media company who brings in a creative director. They were people who were creative enough to be the big idea, to share that vision. You and I, Lindsay, experienced it, other departments where we worked, presented and sold hallucinations all the time.
Well, and also because clients want to buy that sexy vision too, right?
Absolutely.
And then everyone complains that the idea gets whittled down and whittled down and whittled down to a banner ad. It's like, well, if they need a banner ad, like if banner ad is what is driving the performance of their business results, we need to have a practical approach to what actually needs to happen. And it's not just about winning pitches, it's about strategic work in the name of performance.
I'll go back to, do you remember that first time we kind of had aha moments working together? We'd worked together many times, but more, there was an opportunity at a US bank. It was big for us being in Canada, and they literally were looking for a banner campaign. And the person that came through was like, there's no money here. And we were sort of like, okay, but so we looked at the brief. It was like, this is really a smart brief. We loved that they wanted a banner campaign merely to test messaging. I mean, this was in 2012 or something like that. So we're like, we like this. And guess what? At that time, or a lot of when I had my own business way back, my biggest moneymaker was doing banner campaigns. So you and I looked at it, we went away and said, okay, well, we did a little bit of research. And we're like, well, how much is it worth? It was worth $72,000.
So they gave it to us because we could play with it?
They gave it to us so we could play with it. But we took that time where we sold in a sort of pitch. And part of the pitch was, we will do the work to fill the gaps of the data we know you don't have that would inform you on whether this was a smart decision or not.
And apply a layer of strategy to the ask.
And then you're going to pay for that, maybe a third of that budget, at which point you decide if you want to continue.
Right.
And I remember they're like, okay, go ahead. And we did it. And I think we turned it into a $2 million partnership in about a year and a half's time.
And basically like worked that relationship in an agency as two consultants. That was, I think, the beginning of all of this. And also I think needs to go on record that we had a very supportive client.
Absolutely.
Very collaborative. You know who you are. You're listening. Still love you.
I think you're in Connecticut now, but we'll leave it at that. But also worked at a company that was that truly had an innovation model.
Right.
And we're even willing to say, don't pay us beyond our thinking if you don't agree.
Like it. Yeah. That's my favorite thing to say.
And that's where the relationship starts. Anyways, great conversation.
The one closing thing I would say is that I'm going to go back on what I said slightly. I think there is an art and a balance between short-term and long-term planning. I'm not going to say never think about what your brand is going to do in 5 years. I think you need to know your mission. I think you need to know what you're striving towards, the value you're trying to provide your customers or your consumers. I think what needs to happen, though, is a more agile approach to short-term strategic planning that takes into consideration mindset in the moment and allows us to adapt in the moment so that we can resonate with people to make our shorter term activation stronger. So I will close with that.
Yeah. I believe long-term planning is all about brand now.
I 100% agree.
So the long-term planning is around the investment behind the purpose of your brand and how your brand will grow equity. And what what success looks like beyond just making money. And that's the conversation everyone's having. And then that allows you to then say, what's the culture that allows or enables that to happen over 5 years? How are you going to do that? That's your mission. And then when we talk about the planning short term, planning has going to have to change. It's going to have to enable more doers to be at the helm. It's going to also have to enable a culture of collaboration. And, like Lindsay said, it's not bad to not be a doer. What's important is
that your vision is doable. Thank you so much. I'm so fired up. Can you please immediately send me that post on LinkedIn because I am I'm going to be lost for the rest of the day.
Okay.
Wait for more, because I'm chiming in. You think LinkedIn was on fire this morning? Wait, I'm not sure anyone has ever said LinkedIn was on fire today.
And I think I have a professional crush on Alexandra Panousis, but maybe that'll that'll totally blow us getting her on this show. But
thanks so much, Sean. Have an awesome day. Goodbye, Marketeers.
bye, everybody. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it.
New episodes launch every 2 weeks, so be sure to subscribe to the Two Marketeers podcast wherever you like to listen.
Or go to the twomarketeers.ca and connect with us.
That's the twomarketeers.ca. Spell it out.
We are everywhere.
The Two Marketeers podcast.
This podcast is over.